Yeah, what I can tell you is that the dude joined me, but I couldn't hear him at all, just very, very faintly. So I was saying to bring the phone closer, but he was saying that there was something blocking it. It's just that he's not in his TARDIS at the moment. So hopefully he will come back. As I say, I saw him. I couldn't really hear him, but I did see him for about a minute. So hopefully he will come back and join in. Now let me while we wait on hopefully Erekose joining us, let me start off by quickly reading through what Emily had written. He's going to try and get his studio ready because his phone isn't working. So we'll give him a couple of minutes. In the meantime, I'll say, let me read to you what Emily Matesic wrote back yesterday. So she put, Paul, thanks for reaching out. I know you're looking for an in-depth response to all of your questions, but what you're asking for happened nearly 15 years ago. I can barely remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, let alone what someone said or what questions were asked more than a decade ago. I've covered thousands of stories since then, and there is no way for me to remember every single specific detail from all of those stories. I'm just going to let my reporting speak for me. You've obviously gone through making a murderer with a fine-tooth comb. And I'm sure you can find all of my stories from that time period as well. Hopefully, those stories will help to answer some of your questions. Thanks, Em. And of course, EM could be short for Emily, or EM could just be, as I say, short for Emily, or Emily Matesic. First of all, thanks for reaching out. I know that you're looking for an in-depth response to all of your questions. Well, no, I wasn't looking for an in-depth response. I was simply asking, as Millbilly has quite rightly pointed out, this was the biggest case in Wisconsin history. All I was asking was, had anybody in the journalist community ever asked Mike Holbach, why did you say the words, the grieving process could last 4 days? I wasn't asking for an in-depth response. Moving on, fair enough, yes, I realised that I can barely remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, me too, let alone what somebody said or what questions were asked more than a decade ago. Well, I say I still think that it's a pretty big case. I covered thousands of stories since then. There is no way to remember every single specific detail. This is interesting because I think that at the time there were people who didn't think much of the grieving process could last days. You know, they're just going to fob it off as being some pathetic, slip of the tongue. I don't buy that at all. I'm just going to let my reporting speak for me. Well, probably like most of you, I probably have read most of Emily Matesic's articles because I do think they're somewhat sort of parroting the state's point of view. And, I get that because I understand, I appreciate that the fact that when you've got an audience. She apparently lives in or near Green Bay. Well, she certainly works for W Bay, which is based in Green Bay. So she obviously lives somewhere. I would speculate somewhere within the Fox Valley area, I believe it's called. You're not going to go up, as John Farrak once pointed out. You're not going to go to Green Bay and as a reporter and tell all the people in Green Bay that the Packers are a rubbish football team. So you've got to be careful about going into Green Bay and telling everybody you've got a corrupt system. But when it was so obvious, that statement, I'm not buying that really. As I say, I reckon I've probably read most of Emily Matesic's articles. You've obviously gone through Making a Murderer with a fine-tooth comb. As regards Mike Holbach's comments, I wouldn't have said that I needed to go, or we don't need to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. I would say it shouts out at us, doesn't it? It shouts out. He knows something, and he's let slip on camera. It's not a case of going through with a fine-tooth comb, everything in Making a Murderer. Yes, we have. Yeah, I'm sure most of you agree. We've watched the documentary, plenty of times. But I don't know if some of us have maybe we're into the dozens of times by now. So she says, you're obviously gone through Making a Murderer with a fine-tooth comb, and I'm sure you can find all of my stories from that time period as well. Mm-hmm. Hopefully those stories will help to answer some of your questions. Well, no, I've never come across anybody from the journalist community who was asked, what the hell is going on? Yes, Hazel, we are still coming, aren't we? Some of us have got less hair than we did a couple of days back, but I think I paid for this one. But never mind. So yes, we're just going to have to wait and see till the evidentiary hearing, and that's going to be interesting. I think Kathleen Zellner should definitely look towards getting Mike Holbach up on the witness stand to explain this. I've just had a message from the dude to say that he's almost there. Trying to get the studio ready. Phone won't work. Well, yeah, that was definitely right. But hopefully, we'll have to give him a big fanfare, won't we, when he appears? A great big marching band fanfare. Most of the time, when Emily Matesic is in a lot of her articles, I've read one where she talks about the actual documentary Making a Murderer, and talking about the fact that it's her job to try and be an unbiased reporter. As I say, I don't know how easy that is when you're based in Green Bay. So I will reply back, based partly on the opinions of some of the people that are tuning in, and I can say, well, I've put what you've written, I've put it out there, I've told people what you said. Here's their take on it. certainly the as I say, the biggest case. That was what Ken Kratz was always bragging about, wasn't it? That he was the one that had prosecuted Stephen Avery. So let's see, how are we doing for the dude? He said he was almost there. So let's see. Nothing yet. As I say, I did kind of bombard her with a lot of stuff to begin with. I started off by, the usual, dear Emily, greetings from Gala. I sent her my video. Here's a few items that I mentioned. Millbilly, I sent her your video of the phone call between Steve and herself. I then sent her the video of the the video is called Soham, 10 years on, Maxine Carr. I then sent her the comment I got back from Mr. Behrens, and it was, as I said earlier, it was a case of I don't have a great read on that, to be honest. It seems many in Manitowoc don't like how it paints the town the same. Others blame the police. I think most agree that the nephew didn't have much to do with anything. So I sent her that because I wanted her to realise that, we've sort of reached out and spoken to people, local people. Certainly, I've sent her the video of Mike Holbach, Grieving Too Soon, it's called. You'll find it there. And the one, I actually did a little 30 seconds of Making a Murderer, a classic line from Mike Holbach, where he's on the steps of the courthouse, and he's talking about how, for Brendan Dassey, all you do is just put the video into the video player, and there's the case. There it is, all explained. We don't even need to bother with a trial because it's all there. We've got it all there. So I sent her some stuff. Actually sent her the link to Stacey Seabrook's songs in the Key of Freedom, just in case she hadn't heard them. I know that she would enjoy that. And as I say, I then got that response back. So I will endeavour to reply politely. I mean, she's a reporter. I've certainly seen a video of her interviewing Ken Kratz, and I'm pretty sure it was after Making a Murderer came out, and I seem to recall he's forever trying to promote his book, but I might be wrong. So I'll have to wait and see on that one. I will ask you again, though, because I think to me it's just so significant, so important. When as I was explaining in my second video, did I send her the second video? Yes. Yeah, that's when. In fact, it was quite funny because it was one sort of afternoon, must have been yesterday afternoonish or late morning time, I think it was. And I noticed that as I was sending her stuff, when you send somebody something in Messenger, you see that they've seen that bit, because their icon, the picture of them, keeps moving down the page. So I knew that she was actually following what I was sending her. And then I sent her my follow-up message. And that's when she's come back and replied with that message. So hopefully the dude is getting his studio all sorted out. Not long to go now. 10 days, and we wait to see. Some people are suggesting that the state will ask for a further extension. And obviously, we can't discount the fact that even though there have been some notable successes for Kathleen Zellner in sending the motion back, in things being sent back to the state court, remanded, two aspects of the case, the CD and the bones issue, has been remanded back to the state court, and they just, obviously, Angela, it's just, to a certain extent, a little bit like Emily, not really wanting to talk much about it because they know that they were, well, in the case of Emily, I think she realizes that they were simply backing the wrong horse all the way along, that they simply have been duped. It's funny how people talk about us being duped by a documentary. She says, you've obviously gone through Making a Murderer with a fine-tooth comb. I would say not just Making a Murderer, the documentary, but everything else about the case. And okay, so some of us have done looked at different aspects of the case, but there's just so much information out there. It just beggars belief that they're still there. Very, very very political situation. Well, I'm not going to keep you any longer. I'll just read it once more, just so that you can all, and I won't interrupt this time. I'll just read straight through the full message that Emily has sent. She wrote, Paul, thanks for reaching out. I know you're looking for an in-depth response to all of your questions, but what you're asking for happened nearly 15 years ago. I can barely remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, let alone what somebody said or what questions were asked more than a decade ago. I've covered thousands of stories since then, and there is no way for me to remember every single specific detail from all of those stories. I'm just going to let my reporting speak for me. You've obviously gone through MAM with a fine-tooth comb, and I'm sure you can find all of my stories from that time period as well. Hopefully those stories will help to answer some of your questions. Just remembered, if I go to my Twitter, despite the fact that Ken Kratz blocked me, I still have some of the messages. Yeah, here we go. Here's I didn't always get a response from everything I put to Ken Kratz, but I put, Dear Ken, I have noticed that district attorneys tend to progress their careers by either becoming judges or moving into politics. I believe I read that you had political ambitions. Was it the sexting scandal that scuppered those ambitions? I also noticed that you attempted to block Making a Murderer before its release. Ken replied with, was there a reason why you decided to read books by people who had nothing to do with the Avery murder trial, in favour of those who sat on the sidelines and throw insults? It only took 2 questions from me and your agenda rose to the surface like the head on a pint. I think he's a bit upset at Sean Atmore's book. Sadly, I'm afraid our, quote, conversation is over. May I suggest exchanging quips with Miss Zellner? She will like your style. To which I replied, Dear Ken, my agenda has been and always will be to seek out the truth. Sadly, as with the wrongful convictions of Steve and Brendan, you see things purely and simply as a public opinion exercise. I offered you the opportunity to discuss some of these issues about the case. The offer is still there. I have not had the pleasure of speaking with Kathleen Zellner. I then sent him a couple of videos that I'd done about Ken Kratz's journey from hero to zero. I then sent him another message about the fact that I briefly said, imagine how well your book will sell when you start spilling the beans about corruption in Wisconsin. I think that everybody would start telling wanting to read the book. I also sent him details about a case here in the UK last year of a boy that was only 17 who has actually murdered his girlfriend. And it was just to show a comparison of his press conference with the way that something similar is dealt with in the UK. This is actual facts, you know. Judge Peter Blair, QC, the recorder of Bristol, lifted reporting restrictions that prevented the media from identifying Griffiths. In other words, normally in the UK, if somebody's under 18, you can't even name that person. The judge said Griffiths, who will be sentenced on November the 8th, had admitted an extremely grave crime. He ruled that it was appropriate, reasonable, and proportionate for him to lift the order and allow for Griffiths' identity to be made public. But that was all, just the identity of the person that had been arrested. No details. The press are not allowed to give details. So I sent him a message to say that I must admit I was amazed that you were able to get away with your March 2nd press conference. But pronouncing Steve and Brendan guilty before they had even had a trial reminded me of the past history of the legal system here in the Scottish borders. Back in the 1700s, there was a case, I think some of you have heard about it. It's entitled Jeddart Justice, where some sheep rustlers were arrested for stealing sheep. They, as I say, they were arrested. They were executed, hung on the Thursday, and the following Tuesday, when the judge came into town, they had the trial. It's known in legal circles, as I say, as Jeddart Justice. I then sent him another question. Hi, Ken. I put any mention of Brendan Dassey's computer in your revised novel. I understand that you would like to see Brendan released soon. I then carried on. Has Mike Holbach got over the grieving process? He famously said that it could take days, even though at that time Teresa was only reported missing. Did Bert and Ernie ever investigate that statement of his? To which Ken Kratz, of all people, likes to try and pretend to have taken offence. Is Mike Holbach over the grieving process? I can't believe what a cruel and shallow person you've turned out to be. Shame on you. Well, Ken, I suppose it's probably exchanging messages with you that has caused me to go so far downhill. But I will never, ever get anywhere near to the depths of depravity, Ken, that you have descended into. Okay, I'm not going to keep you any longer. There's rugby on the telly. Finally, as I say, I'll just read Emily's comments once more for anybody that's just joined and want to hear this again. You should send Emily her interview with Stephen to. Yeah, that's exactly what I did. I did send her the phone call between her and Steve, because I put the fact that as far as I was concerned, I could sense that Emily Matesic was sort of couldn't comprehend why Stephen would be trying to sort of protest his innocence, and she came across as being almost as if, Steve, why she thought that she could just phone him up and say, look, Steve, everything's stacked against you. You might as well confess. You might as well confess to me here on the phone that, that would be good for me. We could get this all sorted with. And she's like incredulous that Steve didn't just say, oh, I give up. Yeah, I did it. She wrote, as I say, here we go. Yeah, Bert and Ernie. Paul, thanks for reaching out. I know that you're looking for an in-depth response to all of your questions. No, I'm not. I was only asking one question. Did any of the journalists ever think that's strange? Did they ever think, wow, what Mike has just said strains credulity? But what you're asking for, or I presume about what you're asking about, happened nearly 15 years ago. Yeah, as we all know, in one of the biggest cases in Wisconsin history. I can barely remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, let alone what somebody said or what questions were asked more than a decade ago. I think, trust me, Emily, if there had been any conversation amongst the journalists about that, you would have remembered. I've covered thousands of stories since then, and there is no way for me to remember every single specific detail from all of these stories. I'm just going to let my reporting speak for me. You've obviously gone through MAM with a fine-tooth comb, and I'm sure you can find all of my stories from that time period as well. Hopefully those stories will help to answer some of your questions. No, unfortunately not. As I say, there is very little mention of it. All we can hope for is that at some point at the evidentiary hearing, Mike Holbach gets to explain exactly what he is on about. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. And as I say, sorry that Erekose was unable to join us. He did say he was going to try from his phone, but there was no volume coming out of his phone at all when he was speaking. He could hear me, but I couldn't hear him. Anyway, we'll catch you all later. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon or morning and daytime. We'll catch you again soon. Bye for now.